Hi there and welcome to Central Texas Gardener. I'm Tom Spencer. For us, planting the vegetable garden comes easiest in fall and winter. Today, Joe and John Dwyer from Angel Valley Organic Farm explain how they transition from hot to cold weather. They'll also share their favorite food crops and how to get started. On tour, let's visit Urban Roots, where growing means more than a season's harvest.
Do that for every row. And this one, it's zephyr squash, which is like the yellow and green ones that look kind of like tie-dye. Oh, and when you put them in the bucket, put them butt to butt so they don't scratch each other.
It's a busy day in early summer for high school students intent on harvesting crops they started in spring. They work side by side with professional farmers who operate Hands of the Earth Farm on shared land in East Austin. The students work an acre and a half that Urban Roots leases for a program that extends far beyond lessons in agriculture. They're paid for their work after going through formal interviews that give them practice for adult life ahead. Max Elliott and Mike Evans, Urban Roots program co-coordinators, are their guides, both in horticulture and essential life skills.
YouthLaunch is a local nonprofit here in town that creates empowering opportunities for young people by engaging them in service. Urban Roots is YouthLaunch's newest program, where we bring high school students ages 14 to 17 out to the farm here, and over a 25-week period we work to grow food for the community. So 40% of what we grow we donate directly to local soup kitchens and food pantries, and the rest we sell at the Austin Farmers Market downtown, at a low-income farm stand, at a neighborhood WIC clinic, and we also sell to neighborhood grocery stores and restaurants as well. Well, in the springtime, our 18 youth spend 2 days after school for 2 hours and all day on Saturday. So each young person spends about 9 hours a week from mid-February through mid-May. And then from the beginning of June through mid-July, we're out here 5 days a week for approximately 35 hours a week. So youth get a chance to really spend a lot of time with really hands in the soil to really watch the seasons shift, to kind of watch the farmscape shift from, early spring through late summer. And so they really get to see and participate in 2 full seasons.
I see like the produce at the grocery stores, and they all look the same. They're all perfect, and you can buy it all year round. And that's just kind of crazy to me now, because I know we don't have winter vegetables out here on the farm. We don't have carrots, we don't have spinach, we don't have lettuce, any greens. They're not out here anymore. They're not in season. They're not naturally being grown.
Like when you harvest it, it's just like, it feels so great. It makes you feel so good inside. And then like when you eat it, it just tastes better. Just, you know where it came from, and you just like, you can probably remember that you picked it,
Breeze and Vivian are 2 of the 3 assistant crew leaders who went through the first program in 2008, encouraged by high school teachers. Urban Roots selected them to come back to strengthen their leadership skills as peer educators.
And then you also have to balance this friendship leadership thing where, you're out in the field with them, and they're like almost my age. So some of them are, I'm the oldest person, or I'm the oldest intern, but some of them are like a year behind me. And it's just hard to balance that, like, get that respect while still maintaining that friendship.
Vista volunteer Carly Blankenship came from Iowa to expand her scope as she chooses her life's destination. For some, this is their first experience with growing anything. For all, it's a revelation in the process that brings food to the table.
I think it's just kind of the whole experience of watching things grow, starting from a tiny little seed, actually not even just a tiny little seed, starting from putting compost into the soil and tilling it in, and then planting seeds, and then caring for them and watching them grow, and then being able to harvest the fruit off whatever plants you're growing, and then being able to sell it or cook it and serve it. It's just the entire cycle just creates this very strong bond with you and the earth, and I've kind of come to love this farm because I've put so much work into it, and just from the very beginning, from where there's nothing out here, no green, just completely brown, just the soil, and everything's not in rows or beds or anything, and coming out to how green it is and how large it is and how tall it is. It's just amazing. I've got a little sister who I'm very close to, and she doesn't like spinach, or she did not like spinach until I brought it home from the farm fresh and forced it down her throat, and she was like, oh my goodness. I feel like she's just kind of opened up, because I was a big vegetable eater before I got on the farm. Didn't really know where they came from, but I liked them and I ate them. Annalie was not, and now she's way into it. She's always asking me, when are you going to bring home this? When are you going to bring home this? And so it's great to see her kind of opinions on vegetables changing.
They get to take home as much as they want, but another perk is seeing their customers' response at the farm stands and markets.
I think it really, blows them away whenever somebody comes up and is like, y'all's produce looks great. I could just feel them kind of just lift off the ground just ever so slightly. And I think that is, seeing that interaction with the customer really nourishes everyone in the hard work that we do here.
I love the market. It's like one of my favorite things to do here. And it's just like, I love just talking to all the different people there. It's just like such a diverse place.
Just as rewarding is donating 40% of the harvest to families in need.
Then also giving it away, it makes you feel so good to give someone a meal for that day. We went to Caritas last summer, and we served like a squash soup and all these different vegetables, and we had prepared them and served them. And then afterwards, several people came back up and thanked us, and it was just like a great feeling.
By the time the farm interns hang up their tools in July, they've learned a lot more than how to grow an organic tomato.
And we also have cooking classes and workshops about money management. So it's not just agriculture, it's a whole youth development thing.
Not all the work here at the farm is hands in the soil, is out in the fields. We do lots of different workshops on financial management. We have a soil sciences workshop. We do public speaking workshops. We play lots of team building games. So we really try to make this experience really interactive. And while it is, we really focus on job training, we really focus on what hard, meaningful work is all about so that we can serve the community. We stress a really strong work ethic.
Some of the farm interns now plan to go to ag school and become farmers. For everyone, it's an empowering experience that stretches them and their view of the world.
I believe that they'll take this experience and they'll understand what service is about. And I think that that'll change the way that they connect with their community and give back to the community for the rest of their lives.
Urban Roots is such a cool program. I'm sure you enjoyed that piece. Right now we're going to be meeting Joe and John Dwyer from Angel Valley Organic Farm. Welcome back to Central Texas Gardener.
Thank you.
It's great to have you back here. We're going to be talking about transitioning the veggie garden into the fall and getting ready for the winter crops and all that kind of stuff. But I want to take just a moment right at the beginning here just to talk about what you do out at Angel Valley and the response you're getting right now in the local community to locally grown food.
It's huge. Our biggest problem really now is that we're a small farm and we can't meet demand. I mean, it's a wonderful problem to have.
Yeah.
It's better than just sitting there thinking, where are the customers, where are the customers? Now it's thinking, how can we grow more and how can we get more stuff to them?
Yeah, it seems to me that there's been almost like a tidal shift in the past 5 years with people's awareness about the importance of supporting locally grown food and really appreciating the quality that comes with that.
We've been building our farm up this is our 11th year, and every year has gotten subsequently better and better and better. And this year, at the beginning, we weren't real sure how the economic events were going to affect the farm, and I think it just shows that eating locally is really important.
Yeah. Well, people are investing in things they really care about, and locally grown food is one of those things. Let's talk about stuff to do out there at the farm and in our backyards right now. And, a lot of people say the fall garden and into the winter really is the best time to garden in Central Texas when it comes to food and veggie gardening. What are some of the things that you can do now when it's so hot out there still in September? It's pretty brutal. What are some of the things that you can do to get those seedlings that you need to get going now started?
Well, to get your garden started?
It's right now. It depends on what was in your garden to begin with. If you if you have a large garden that part of it was set aside for the fall, then it's just a matter of getting those beds prepared. If you still have some summer stuff that's pretty much fried out there, because it probably is, it's time to get the diseased plants out, or turn the organic matter back in, and prep the soil and get it ready to go in with what you're going to be planting for the fall.
Right. So prep work is essential, and a lot of people get to that even earlier in August, and they're turning the compost in and getting things ready at that time. Well, but starting those seedlings, it seems like counterintuitive. You know, it's so brutal still. What are some tricks to get those seedlings up successful?
It kind of depends on what you're going to put in there. Things will surprise you. In mid-September, you can start things like greens. Chard will do well. Kale, collards. We start our beets. We start our turnips. You can try radishes. We've had a little trouble with those when it's too hot, but if it cools down. And then soon enough, once it gets a little bit cooler, you're going to be able to start lettuces and spinach and carrots. The ground has to be cooler and all that. As far as brassicas, you know, the big things like broccoli and cauliflower that everybody wants, you're going to need to do transplants in mid-September.
Okay.
And a rule of thumb that we do is we try to look for early plants, like shorter days rather than longer days. Broccoli closer to like 50 to 60 days rather than 60 to 70 days.
Okay.
And for a gardener, they're going to get, you know, they're going to get their stuff quicker, and it's going to be, it'll make them happier.
Right. So things that go to actually start to produce in shorter periods of time. I always tell people, and everybody wants to do tomatoes again in the fall. It's like, okay, you can do that, but use early girl.
It's true.
You know.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, exactly.
What are some, if you do have some of the little plants out there in the ground itself, what are some ways to help them along if we get another, another one of these heat spells, for example, comes on where it's in, upper 90s and the wind is blowing, it's dry and desiccating. How do you keep those things alive?
There's two things you can do. One is shade cloth. If you can find some shade cloth, you can hoop over your plants and anchor them on both sides, and use some 40% shade would work. But even row cover, a lighter row cover will work. It keeps the moisture in the soil. It keeps the air from drying them out, and although you're trapping that heat in there, it's amazing that plants will withstand higher temperatures with higher humidity.
Just don't look under the row cover in midday, because you'll panic. It's terrifying. I do that a lot. And John will say, well, don't look at it now. Look at it tomorrow morning, because it'll just, they'll just look like,
right.
But then they'll perk back up. It's amazing.
Their natural reaction is just to droop. So you're looking at plants that are just in their worst condition they could possibly be in.
Sure. So shade cloth or floating row cover, use the hoops.
I like a half-inch Schedule 40 PVC is really the, and you can go with wire and things like that, a heavier gauge wire, but if you can find a half-inch Schedule 40 PVC and cut it in anywhere from 5 to 6 foot lengths, and you have soft enough ground that you can, you have to do it when and this is something that I've found, you have to do it when it's warm, because it will bend in that short distance when it's warm, but if you try to do it in cooler temperatures, it'll snap.
That's a good tip.
But Schedule 40 will bend where 3/4 inch will kink.
So put it out in the heat?
Well, it has to be done in the heat. I tried doing some this past winter, and I actually took them in a greenhouse to get them up to 80 or 90 degrees because I was snapped, and they're dangerous.
Yeah.
When they break, when half-inch Schedule 40 snaps in the cold, it's sending fragments all over. So
I take it you do drip irrigation for your plants, so that you don't have to worry about taking the cloth off and all that kind of stuff, which is an important thing to think about if you're going to do the hoops for cover.
That's true.
Especially if you use floating row cover, a little awkward to water.
Yeah, it's a pain in the neck.
But establish yourself in such a way that it makes it easy to take it off and put it on. Anchoring it on one side. We use half-inch rebar. And we use little pins that go down on the rebar and hold them. So it's just a matter of taking it off one side, flipping it over, watering, and putting it back on.
When I have really tender little plants out there, my tendency is to want to baby them. I want to give them extra love and attention. I know it's easy to overwater a seedling. You have to be really cautious about that. The water has to drain well. But I also like to add things. I typically, for a young seedling, I'll use something like liquid seaweed. Do you have a favorite thing that you use as a fertilizer?
The seaweed is
it's
big.
excellent. Yeah, kelp.
Mm-hmm.
We do like a kelp and molasses
kelp,
mixture.
molasses, and then yucca. There's a yucca extract that you can get that's
really?
a sticker.
I've never heard of this before.
It's used for whenever you're using BT or something like that to extend the life of it. But also it has some properties of enabling things like that to last on the plants longer.
Okay. And all the stuff that we're talking about for protecting from the heat kind of applies for the cold too. And you know, a lot of the plants that we're talking about here, you get them started now, and they start to grow and develop over the fall. But it's not really until the winter time that the harvest comes certainly for the brassicas, the cauliflowers, and the broccoli and stuff like that. And when I think of winter gardening, I think of lettuce. You know, it's just like the greens, the collard greens, things like that.
Oh yeah.
So, is it really important to protect those during the winter time as well?
We do. We do. You're just going to have nicer, I mean, you're not going to have tip burn and all that kind of things. You're just going to have a lot nicer looking. Chard is a lot more delicate. Collards can handle it better. Kale can handle it better. But it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
The thing about row cover, and if you have it sitting there already, it doesn't hurt to throw it on there. We get such extremes. We'll go from being in the 80s and low 90s for a long period of time, and then bam, you all of a sudden you're down to freezing temperatures.
Right.
That's where plants really, they just freak out.
Okay. Well, I want to give people, you know, you grow such a wonderful variety of things, and I understand that your farm stand is going to be back up and operating in the end of this month in September. And you have a website that informs people. What's the website?
AngelValleyFarms.com.
AngelValleyFarms.com.
Sadly, yeah, somebody had already taken Angel Valley Farm when we were looking for a domain name.
Curse them.
I wasn't happy there in Oregon.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, farms, they'll find you. Yes. And again, congratulations on the growing success of not just your individual farm, but this whole movement of local organic farmers. I think it's so exciting and such a good thing for our community that we have folks like you out there doing this work for us and bringing the fresh food right to our tables practically, which is wonderful.
Well, it's great to have someone like you on the air that's promoting this as well.
Well, it's a mutual admiration society, so it's great. Congratulations again. Thanks for being with us. And coming up next, Daphne Richards is going to be bringing you Down to Earth.
Hello and welcome to Down to Earth. I'm Daphne Richards, the County Extension Agent for Horticulture with the Texas AgriLife Extension Service. I'm new to the program after the extremely famous and wonderful tenure of Skip Richter, the horticulturist here in Travis County for many, many years. So I want to thank you for welcoming me to your homes, and I look forward to talking to you in the future about gardening. Today's question comes from John in Elgin. So thank you, John, for sending your question on oak galls. You sent us some pictures, and there were some fuzzy things on the back of your live oak leaves, and those were an orange gall. There are other colors of galls, but these galls are actually an insect. There's not much you can do about them. They don't really damage the tree, and next year when the new leaves come out, you most likely won't have that problem. They are kind of cyclical, and so hopefully next year you won't have a problem with them, but you shouldn't notice any difference in the health of your plant, so they're not really something to worry about. The insect involved is a wasp, and it's not something you could treat for. The galls themselves are something that a pesticide would not be able to penetrate. Our plant this week is Heavenly Cloud Sage. This sage is one of my favorite because the flowers are fragrant. As with all Texas sages, it does bloom more when the air is humid. So we haven't seen a lot of blooming this summer on our Texas sages. A few weeks ago when we did have some rain, we had some blooms on our plants, our Texas sages around town. One of the things I love about this plant is that it's quite a bit shorter than most of our Texas sages, and so you can actually enjoy it in a container. If you're running out of space, you've planted lots of beautiful plants in your garden, you now can have this beautiful plant in a container. That also will allow you to have it close to your door and enjoy the fragrance of it, which is a nice thing about this plant. It's time in your garden to plant some blue-leaved vegetables, what we call blue-leaved vegetables. This is your broccoli and your cauliflower, your cabbage and your kohlrabi. These are what we call winter plants, winter vegetables. So they like the cooler weather. We're not that cool yet, but you can get those planted out into the garden, protect them a little bit from the sun, and then you will be able to get some harvests from them this winter when things cool off. We do have mild winters, which is very nice for us for being able to garden through the winter, unlike the northern parts of our nation. You also need to still watch out for the heat on the rest of the plants in your garden, in addition to these cool season vegetables if you plant them. If you still have some tomatoes coming into harvest, keeping them a little cooler while we're still warm, watering them plentifully will help you continue to get a harvest from those. You can also start preparing your beds for those cooler season flowers if you want to have them. Do that by adding compost and tilling the ground well. For more plant tips, contact your extension office and visit klru.org/CTG.
Thanks, Daphne. Glad to have you on board with Central Texas Gardener. Now let's check in with John Dromgoole for Backyard Basics.
Hello gardening friends, welcome to Backyard Basics. Well, a lot of people have been interested in growing food in their yard. Lots of people all across the country. It's about quality, it's about availability right outside, it's about being there with the children, it's about staycation, staying at home and doing work in the yard. So I'd like to explain a little bit about one of the experiences I've had this last year, and that's with the square foot garden. If you're going to do a square foot garden, one of the things that you need to look for is a nice sunny spot in the yard. That's very important. One of the beauties of the square foot garden is if you have a limited size of the light, this is perfect for it. Or if you have a deck or a porch and that's all you have to garden in, that's perfect for it. So you can do this. One of the things you can also do is, if you can't bend over much anymore, or you're in a wheelchair, you can raise the bed up nicely and still get all the production that you would on the ground. It's got a little board underneath it, it supports the soil, and so, and we make these out of recycled wood. We went to a construction site and asked for some wood. This is 6 inches. You can make it 10, you know, anything that you want. But Mel Bartholomews, the author of this whole thing, suggests a 6-inch one, and he says that's all you really need. And indeed, he does quite well with that type of a garden. What's also important, if it's going to be called a square foot garden, then it has to have a grid on it. Each one is a square foot. This is mandatory, or you get lost and you got stuff growing all over the place and you lose the ability to plant 20% more vegetables in less space than you would in a row. So this increases your production in these sites. And there's an orderly way of planting. Some vegetables may be spaced about 4 apart. Heads of lettuce might go in something like this. So that's an important thing to keep. Here's one that has 9 spacings in it. Maybe it's beets or spinach would go into something like this. So that's another one. And then here's one, maybe radishes, beets once again, the smaller beets. I love beets. And so this is the way that you keep things in order and keep the production up. And Mel developed these particular things. You know, when you're out there in the landscape, it would be nice to get rid of the grass. I think that's very important. But if you don't, make sure that you use a weed fabric. This will stop the grass from coming through. I think this is an essential piece of information. You don't want things growing up from underneath at all. So that's important also. And now, one of the more important things that Mel brings up is about the soil mix. I've tried different soil mixes thinking, well, I can do one too, and they did well. But the one that did the best really was Mel's mix. And so it consists of, in the blend right here, in thirds. It's 1/3 vermiculite, it's 1/3 peat moss, I like to use core fiber instead, and 1/3 compost. This is where the nutrients come from because he really doesn't feed it. And he does suggest, if you're buying compost in bags, that you get an assortment of compost for an array of nutrients and different types of organisms. So that's a good way to do this. And we've been successful with it. And especially when you have the raised beds, well, it's very light. You don't have a bunch of soil in it. Now, some other things that would help you increase the productivity out in that garden could be to use a trellis. And he makes them out of conduit. He's tried everything. He's tried bamboo, he's tried wood, and none of them have held up as nicely as the conduit. And so you put your little trellis on there, you can buy those things, and then you start planting next to it. another great safe way to bring up vegetables and not have them go all over the place. Pretty soon I'll be planting some of those wonderful sugar snap peas that we grow in the winter months. And you know what? That's one of my favorite gardens. So if you're going to do this, you ought to get the book. Mel's book and his all-new book, Square Foot Gardening, is essential. I've just shown you some highlights right here of how it's done, but the truth is you got to read about it. You'll learn quite a bit from his book, and I think that that's the best way to go. So if you want a lot more vegetables in your garden this year and done in an easy way, easier than you've ever done, try Square Foot Gardening. I'm John Dromgoole. I'll see you next time.
Visit klru.org/CTG for more tips, online video, and our weekly blog. Until next week, I'll see you in the garden. Visit klru.org/CTG to learn more about today's program, upcoming events, and to sign up for our electronic newsletter. Check out John's how-to tips and visit Trish's Corner for ideas inside and out. Get growing at klru.org/CTG.